Welcome to the How to Read a CGM presentation by Oh So Easy Nutrition. Today we are going to be discussing this because I have seen a rise in the utilization of CGMs for individuals that do not have diabetes. This presentation is adequate for both people with diabetes and without diabetes. I'm a registered dietitian and I'm also the owner of Oh So Easy Nutrition. For those who are joining later, thank you so much for watching this recording. We hope that you enjoy this recording and you find it to be helpful. Okay. This presentation is meant for individuals without or with diabetes. It's going to be obviously very generalized, so I do recommend speaking with a registered dietitian. At Also Easy Nutrition, we do accept patients from Texas, California, Colorado, Oregon, and Georgia. So if you are looking to work with a registered dietitian in any of those states, we are here to help you. Okay, well, let's get started. This is the Diabetic Nutrition Education Program, starting with just CGM use. The Dutch Lifelines cohort has conducted an analysis and found that mortality risk was 87% higher for those with type 2 diabetes and a low quality diet. It's important to note that when we have CGMs, we have complete access to data that's being collected over a long period of time. Now, using this data or seeing this data and utilizing the data can seem a little bit overwhelming at first. So once you get your app and you are synced in, I want you to pay close attention to the levels. But before you start trying to decipher, we need to understand what are the differences in the nutrition and how that can impact your glucose levels. So we're looking at this chart here on the left. And we're noting that the basal glucose level rises minimally for a person without diabetes. If you didn't have insulin resistance, which we'll talk about a little bit more, this is how it would appear after you have a meal. Okay, so very minimal. Note that the increase in basal glucose levels when someone develops diabetes. So we have a lot of insulin that's working and trying to do the best it can to put the glucose in the cell, but it's really resistant. So that insulin resistance is being shown here. The glucose levels are staying higher in the blood vessel for longer periods of time. So we see that in image number 2. By the time someone has an A1C of approximately 8% or greater, there is a larger contribution of basal glucose and postprandial peaks that are going to be higher. So what we want to do when we manage diabetes, pre-diabetes, or the prevention of these chronic conditions, we want to make sure that our A1C levels are as low as they can be, anything lower than 5.5, 5.6 to be outside of the pre-diabetic range. But once you're at that 8%, look how high the peaks of glucose, which is sugar in the blood, are with that extreme insulin resistance. So your CGM, your continuous glucose monitor, will allow you to see this data in real time and will allow you to make some changes, nutritional changes for you to improve your glucose. The continuous glucose monitors are used to optimize glucose levels. They can show trends. And what we're specifically looking at here is a trend over a period of time. We're not necessarily looking at this one-time occurrence like, oh, you had really low blood sugar in the middle of the night. What could be going on? And then you're reacting quickly, trying to make nutritional changes off of one incident. We want to actually avoid that. We want to see, is there a pattern of that going on through a series of days? You are going to be receiving several alarms and alerts throughout the day saying you're high, you're low. Now, it's important to note that these continuous glucose monitors, there can be 25% of the time where the information that they're providing is not completely true. So there is some variability and for how accurate they are. So just be mindful. Don't take everything that you're seeing there to heart. Consult with your dietitian if you are noticing something that is a little off. Now, how does your glucose level and these trends, how do they change with food intake? So first of all, the CGM data is going to change according to your meals. Okay, all macronutrients are going to play a role in your levels in the continuous glucose monitor. The biggest impact is going to be shown by the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates at the end of this really large molecule that we see, it has a glucose molecule, and this is what we're monitoring. So anytime you consume a carbohydrate, which we will be defining very soon, you're going to see an even bigger spike in your glucose levels. Carbohydrates are very important for the body. They are a source of fuel. It allows you to think and allows you for you to generate energy in all the cells through ATP. But not all carbs are made equal. A little bit more about carbohydrates. Carbs are part of the three macronutrients, which are carbs, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram, and so does protein, versus fats have 9 calories per gram. Now, carbohydrates are going to produce that glucose, right? They're going to have that glucose molecule inside, and they're typically found in fruits, starchy vegetables like legumes, corns, peas, potatoes, dairy products like milk and yogurt, whole grain wheat or any grain, and then sweets like sugar, syrup, honey, condiments, and any other sweet additives that contain calories. Now, there are 2 different types of carbs. One is simple and one is complex, but both have glucose. Now, in this image, can you find all of the carbohydrates in the photo? I'm going to go ahead and pause to give you some time to check that. Okay, going back to this photo here. So our pancakes are going to be a carbohydrate. The banana is a fruit, so it is a carbohydrate. Then we have our hash browns, which are potatoes, starchy potatoes, carbohydrate. We have ketchup, which is also has added sugars in there, so that's a carb. The syrup on the pancakes is a carbohydrate. And then we have milk that contain lactose, a different type of carbohydrate. And we have the juice here, which is also a different type of carbohydrate. The only thing that isn't a carb is just the butter. So having this American meal where we have a fruit, pancakes, hash browns, a little bit of milk, or even that could be milk in the coffee or just a juice, it's filled with carbohydrates. So we can have a really high glucose spike in our device after eating this meal. It's really lacking proteins and fats. So a little bit of a game here. Can you guess the CGM value for the meal? It's okay if you don't know it. Just throw a wild number out there and we'll go ahead and take it. So on the left side, we have a delicious stack of pancakes with fruits. And then on the right side, we have a nice high in protein omelet filled with vegetables and, of course, lots of fiber in there. So for the CGM value for this meal here with the pancakes, you can get anywhere to 242 versus this high in protein meal can be 160. So big difference when we consume something that is extremely high in carb versus something that is more protein rich. Now, when we look at our values in our CGM, I want you to understand that there's something called time in range. And when you work with a dietitian, they're going to ask you, well, what is your percentage time in range? So there's going to be times where you're very high, and that might be 4% of the time, like we see here, where you're in the high level, which might be 38% of the time, and when you're in the target range, which is time in range, this person was in it for 58% of the time. So we want to get in the green as much as possible. So taking this 58 and actually aiming for 70% of the time to be within the target range. So making sure we are reviewing these reports, but don't get too excited because you're going to need to collect a lot of data. We want to actually leave the continuous glucose monitor collecting data for at least 10 days. After the 10-day mark, we can look at these values and start evaluating where the percentage falls in the chart. So don't start overanalyzing your numbers if you haven't even had it on for more than 10 days. Now, we want to check the time in range at least every 2 weeks. This is not something we need to check daily because we need a lot of data to be compiled so that we can get better estimates of what's going on. Remember, there's that 25% loss in accuracy because devices move, and so just keep that in mind. Now, every 5% increase in time in range can help prevent diabetes complications. So if you are struggling with diabetes, we want to improve this as much as possible. Once again, getting to that over 70%. So your curve shouldn't look like a roller coaster. It shouldn't be like up and down, up and down. It should have a nice and consistent, flat, narrow pattern. Okay. This one is looking a little bit out of control. This is someone who might not have any good understanding of how to control their carbohydrate intake. So it's very high, then it backs down, very high, backs down. So ideally, we want to look for this type of behavior right here, and we're looking specifically for patterns, nothing else. So let's look at this example here. This person woke up around 8 a.m. They had breakfast at 9 a.m. We see that it went up and then it kept going up right at lunch, which was around 12 or 1. It went really, really, really high. Notice those, it's not flat at all. It continues to rise. It's way out of the target range. And then she's she's having dinner at 6 and 7 and then exercising, but it looks like it's staying up all the way from 11 a.m. to almost 9 p.m. when she's exercising. So once she was able to exercise after dinner, we start to see it drop. Okay. There is a lot of variability here, and we want to prevent this as much as possible. And when we are looking for patterns, we want to start by analyzing when are you waking up and when are you going to bed, and when is the rise in glucose occurring. Now, when you are working on your nutrition to improve this percentage time in range, we want to do these 4 specific things to improve our overall nutrition. We want to eat whole foods such as fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. It is easier said than done because we have built habits around convenience and also habits around the food that we feel comfortable cooking. So if you are having trouble making the switch and adding more of the fruits and vegetables, you're a great candidate to work with a registered dietitian. We also want you to eat a lot more non-starchy vegetables. So think leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, which is my favorite. And then we also want to reduce the amount of added sugar and refined sugar found in grains like baked goods, chips, or even beverages like Coke or tea. But the fourth one will be limit sugary beverages, so just soda or juice. Even juice, a lot of people are like, well, it's healthy, it's juice, it has nutrients. But even juice can be, it lacks the fiber, and if consumed on an empty stomach, can cause you to have a really, really high spike in glucose. There is a significant emphasis in most of the four pillars and is choosing whole rather than highly processed foods. Fruits, vegetables, beans, and lean proteins are going to offer nutrients without adding sugar or refined grains. So this is a whole foods diet approach. So let's see, what does that look like? How can we improve our numbers every single time we have a meal? I'm not asking you to have the same food, rice and veggies, rice, veggies and chicken every single night. I want you to still enjoy your cultural foods, but making the necessary adjustments with the guidance that I'm going to provide to make sure that it's adequate and it improves your target range numbers. So we want at least 50% of the plate to be non-starchy vegetables. We want 25% of the plate to be protein, and then we want 25% of the plate to be complex carbs. And if possible, choosing 0-calorie drinks or water. So let's see here if you can choose 4 foods that will adhere to the 4 pillars. I'll give you a moment. Okay. Here are 4 foods from that menu that was previously shown that are going to improve, and it's going to align with the 4 pillars that we discussed. So getting a double portion of our green beans, getting our protein with a nice big size of protein. And then our starch, we actually decided to use that corn. This is going to be a carbohydrate. A lot of people just think this is just a vegetable, but it does impact your glucose levels, which is why I chose it. And then for our beverage, we are choosing water. If you are a vegetarian, you need to make sure that you're adding proteins that also have a lot of healthy fats because you still need a lot of calories. So that might be like tofu, beans, lentils, nuts and seeds, avocados, and olive oil in this red section. So just keep that in mind. You do need to be more focused on your protein intake. This is how to consume a meal if you are a vegetarian to minimize glucose spikes because typically the vegetarian diet can be really high in carbohydrates and very processed. So in order to minimize these spikes, we recommend something like this. We have a whole grain toast, whole wheat toast, which is a complex carb. We have a lentil soup, which is also has carbohydrates, but it has a lot of protein, so it can be considered a protein. And then we're serving that with a side salad. And for a beverage, I decided to switch things up and I added an unsweet tea. So what about sweet treats? Does that mean that you're never going to be able to have candy or ice cream or brownie? Absolutely not. You can still have all of these foods. I want you to limit the amount of added sugars to 25 to 35 grams per day. So and the reason when we start limiting these added sugars, we're also going to start limiting a lot of the saturated fats, which can also play a role into your heart disease in preventing that. So we want to limit that as much as possible because they tend to be super processed, highly ultra processed, and they also tend to be higher in saturated fats. And of course, they're going to cause really, really high spikes in your blood glucose. So when you read a nutrition facts label, we want to look at the amount of added sugar, 27 grams, 81 grams. This is for just 2/3 of a cup. And minimize that to 25 and 35 grams of added sugar per day. Ideally, we also want to consume any desserts after a meal, so not on an empty stomach, because anytime we consume any of these foods on an empty stomach, what we're going to see is a increase in glucose spikes. So just to recap, in order for us to utilize, better understand our glucose monitor, we need to allow 10 days for it to collect data. We also need to look for patterns. We want to have a steady, flat line almost when it comes to our spikes. We want to minimize the amount of crazy roller coaster spikes. And the way we do that is by limiting added sugars, consuming carbohydrates with proteins, like we saw in that balanced meal, switching for refined carbs like white bread for complex like whole wheat toast. And then, of course, hydrating on these sugar-free, zero calories um, beverages. That is the end of our presentation, and I hope that it gave you a little bit more understanding on how to utilize the data in the continuous glucose monitor and how to make adequate changes to improve those values over time. I'm Anne Marie, registered dietitian and owner of Also Easy Nutrition. If you're looking to work with a registered dietitian, we are accepting patients, and also we do take insurance. So I hope you enjoyed this very short presentation. And if you need anything, check out our website at osoeasynutrition.com.